Welcome back to The Short Game, a show about short video games, games that respect your time. I'm Reagan Kelly, and I'm joined by awesome co-hosts Laura Nash. How are you doing, Laura?
I'm doing great.
And Nate Heininger. How are you doing, Nate?
Reconsidering my full investment in a space hotel. But, you know, I shouldn't have put all my life savings into that after playing this game, but...
Got to withdraw your loyalty from that account.
Timeshares are never a good idea.
And this week we are talking about Tacoma. Tacoma is the newest game from Fullbright, so if you are a very long-time listener to this show, I mean, gosh, how did you even find out about us? Our very first episode of this show, way back in, what was it, 2014? It feels like.
Yes.
Was it, really?
Both feels like and was 2014.
Feels like ancient history. We talked about Gone Home, and if you haven't played that, we have probably talked a lot of sugar about it in a bunch of other episodes over the years. Gone Home was one of the sort of originators of the really poorly named walking simulator genre, or, you know, exploration-oriented games. And this is the first game since that by that team.
Yes, we've been around so long that we are now getting second releases of full games from companies like Fullbright. And arguably, one of the reasons why this podcast even exists is Gone Home. So I know we've been talking about, this game came out like a month ago, and we normally would do something like this, like day of release. But I'm glad we're finally back around to get it, to talk about it.
Yeah, and for those who are newer to the show, I wasn't even on the show back then. Tacoma is not a sequel. It's a completely different thing with a lot of shared DNA. It's set in space. You're not going in someone's house. But a lot of the things that define the exploration genre are here in Tacoma. And it's another great story-based game that's right up our alley.
I've been looking forward to this for a really, really long time. The setup is, yeah, like you said, very, very different from Gone Home. And in some ways, it's a little bit more conventional. Gone Home was the only game that at the time I had played set in the kind of setting that it had, you know, a family home in the 90s, in the very grounded real world setting. And yet, you know, and Tacoma is set on a space station in 2088. I've played a lot of games set on space stations. I mean, you know, it conjures up images of System Shock, or even things like BioShock, to, you know, wander into a space station where everyone is gone, and try to reconstruct what happened there.
But are they gone? I think that's the interesting thing about this game is, as you are playing Amy, who's someone who's investigating a space issue, you're kind of looking at replayable bits of people. So they're gone, but not gone.
Yeah. A space issue. Mm-hmm.
A space issue.
Yeah, that's what really excites me about this game. In 2013, when I first played Gone Home, I thought, this is a new way to tell a story in a video game. And Fullbright invented something there. And where do they go from there? You know, they invented almost completely a new way of telling stories in video games, and told a great story. And then where do they go from there? Do they do another game just like it? Do they use exactly the same, you know, methods to tell a different story? Well, they use some of the same stuff. Like you said, Laura, shared DNA, but it's clear that they really tried to find, you know, a new way to tell a story in a video game, something that wasn't quite the entirely environmental, you know, pick up and read documents style storytelling of their previous game. It has that, and it adds onto it this sort of AR cutscene-esque kind of thing, but it's not quite cutscenes. You know, when I first saw that this game involved sort of wireframes of people walking around with voice acting, telling stories in a scene, I thought, oh no, cutscenes. Cutscenes are not what I wanted from Fullbright. But these aren't cutscenes. This is a kind of new thing. I can't quite think of anything that does this style of thing.
I have one for you. I have one for you, and it's a game that we played very recently. It's not exactly the same, but this game feels sort of similar to when we played the Sexy Brutale.
I had that thought too.
you are entering into scenes that have already happened, and you have the ability to fast forward and replay to follow different individuals, see what they said to each other, see what happened, and you can watch the scene over and over and over as much as you want. Now, obviously in Sexy Brutality, you're trying to interrupt and get into that scene and have an impact on it, whereas this is all you're watching what's already happened. But it had that same feel to me in a totally different environment, totally different reason, totally different setup. But you are entering a room and you start a moment, and it's all about listening to the people talk to each other. That is like a primary element of this game. And we haven't even really set up exactly how this game works, and I think we should kind of take a step back and talk about that a little bit, because you've entered the space station, which is broken into like 4 different sections, and you enter into the section, and it like clicks, and you can download the playback of what happened, and it's these weird skeletal polygon forms.
I think the impression you're supposed to get is that you're seeing the recording that the AI took, and the AI is really more interested in general shapes of the body and the role that person plays. One of my favorite things is the different body types. It could have been so easy for them to do one male, one female body and call it a day, but even the body types are differentiated, which is wonderful. Mm-hmm. But as you're seeing these kind of general shapes, almost like a thermal shape, but they're colored by their icon of their role. You're seeing these people run around. All the voice acting is there, and you can pause, rewind, fast forward. You have a time turner, basically. You can pick up on conversations, go through doors with people, or just stay where you are. It's a different level of... you might have things where you uncover a lost memory. I'm still playing Breath of the Wild because I am months behind the rest of the world, but it's not a cutscene per se. You can't interact with it, but you can move the camera. You can follow people. You can chase them around, or you can let them be and explore a room and a conversation in it.
Yeah. What I thought really is cool about this setup, this sort of, so in the context of the world of the game, these are AR recordings of the space, and so you're wearing some kind of AR goggles or I guess the little pads she puts on her head.
You got your HoloLens handy.
Right, it's a HoloLens, and thanks Microsoft. And they're so she's able to see these sort of recordings of past scenes that have taken place in this space. You're sent to Tacoma, the Lunar Transfer Station Tacoma, which is a space station that orbits the moon, and its role in the system of space stations and other orbital stuff is to basically be a equipment transfer center between Earth and what seem like holiday destinations in space and on the moon.
You work in the hospitality industry.
I know, that's such a weird thing. Like I
love it so much.
I really like that aspect of it. And it's crewed by these 6 people. They're all really distinct individual characters. And I'm sure we'll talk about each of the characters a little bit, in a little bit. But so it's crewed by these 6 very distinct individual characters. And what we're watching are these scenes playing out as Tacoma. You're playing somebody who's coming in after a disaster on the station, and all of the people who normally would crew this station are gone. They're either, we can't tell at the start, are they dead? Did they escape the station? Are we gonna walk in on them just hanging out in one of the rooms somewhere? We don't know where they are or why they're no longer there. We do know that you are playing a contractor whose job is to go into the station and retrieve the station's AI. The station's AI is called Odin. He's this big, all-seeing, all-knowing space station brain, and he's the one who did all these recordings. And as we progress through the station, trying to find out what happened there, and also trying to find Odin, because we're supposed to get there and retrieve his business. We're seeing these recordings of what I guess are kind of Odin's memories.
I kept waiting for the Mike Bithell Extended Universe crossover because they said that it was about 100 years ago when the AI branched, and I was just waiting for it to be Thomas was so alone that day. Unfortunately, Fullbright. It was maybe someday.
Yeah, it is really fun. At one point, you can read everyone's text messages and, conversations. And at one point, someone's saying it's really creepy that you let everything you've ever done get recorded. And the person's like, yeah, I don't really care. Let them watch if they want. Which is great as you're digging through everybody's personal correspondence as a voyeur to have someone kind of give you consent after the fact, but it was only one of the 6 people. It doesn't matter. It's a video game. Everyone consents to you digging into all of their things always in a video game.
And in a weird sense, this sort of digital voyeurism where we're watching these recordings felt almost less transgressive to me than the sort of much more realistic voyeurism of like opening every drawer in someone's bedroom in Gone Home. Yeah. So,
which you can still do here.
Well, that's true. You could definitely still do that here.
And there is a shower scene, but it's a lot less racy when it's like a weird red polygon, AI bot.
So what we already talked about with these recordings that are sort of the main drivers of the story, of course you can, pick up everyone's trash and read through all of their paperwork the same as you might in something like Gone Home or even, Firewatch. But those scenes that make up the majority of the storytelling here, what's really unique about them, we kind of already touched on this, but what I wanted to really emphasize is like there are 6 characters in most of these spaces, and when you walk into a new space in the space station, you can play through these, say, 15 minutes of dialogue, but that 15 minutes might involve, in one room, Evie St. James, the station director, might be having a conversation with Clive Siddiqui, the operations specialist. And in another room, at the same time, Sarah, the medic, might be talking to Odin, who maybe when they're finished talking, she wanders into the next room and has a conversation with Roberta that interrupts a conversation Roberta was having with Natalie. Maybe Andrew was sitting reading something on his AR, I guess, what do you call that? Smartphone-esque thing? Yeah. So these are conversations that flow into each other. These 2 people are talking and then in walks somebody else, but that person is walking in from another room where they were having a conversation that motivates what they're talking about in this room. And then they walk out and something else happens. Oh, and then what that means is that you might have to watch this same thing play out several times, but because you can rewind, you can see, this person walked into the conversation. I'm going to rewind and follow them back to where they were before and see what they were coming from.
And something I loved because of the recency of these events is you're exploring the space as left behind by these people. And you might walk into a space and it is the remains of a party, or there are bottles and cans on the floor, or there might be things tipped over. And as you watch the scenes play out, you might find out how that got there, or you might not. It's really lovely to me that for an exploration that they add this extra literal layer, this augmented reality in the game is helping you understand that this is a real place that was inhabited by these people, and you feel that loss a little bit more significantly than if you were watching these on a monitor or if they weren't actually inhabiting the space in front of you.
Yeah.
I really appreciated that layering. It felt like I was able to, it felt more invasive than I was expecting. In a great way.
What I think this really brings to the table that I don't think I've seen before is that, like, these are in essence a cutscene, right? These are a pre-recorded thing with voiceover dialogue and character animations.
A cutscene in place, yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's what this adds, is that, like, cutscenes are games imitating film, but this is like games imitating site-specific theater or something like that. Something that I was reminded of playing this, and Laura, you'll probably be better able to talk about this than I am because I only know it by what you've told me about it. But like when I got into playing out these scenes, I started thinking about all the descriptions that I've heard from you, Laura, and read about Sleep No More, the sort of site specific. Sorry, it's a
mashup of Rebecca and Macbeth in a hotel in 1930s, and it's in New York. It's by a London company. So for 99.9% of you who've never heard of this, it's basically they got this huge warehouse and they change it up to look kind of like a 1930s hotel, and then you get dumped there, and they loop this 1 hour play 3 times, and you can go anywhere, open any drawer, follow anybody upstairs, and the play is who you follow. You know, you can follow Macbeth, or you can follow a detective, or you can lose people, or you can go into the wall. You can do whatever you want. The difference here, like, shares a lot of the same concept, except here you can rewind. There, if you, lose the detective because he went into a wall, you're turning around and going a different direction.
Yeah.
That's pretty rad.
It is super rad.
I thought of that and thought, like, man, like, this is a really rich vein for storytelling that they could bring some of that. Something like Sleep No More is this unbelievably complicated and probably very expensive production that requires, dozens of actors, enormous amounts of space, and you're in that space with tons of other people trying to observe the same thing. This could bring a lot of that. This is a style of storytelling that I don't think I've seen before that could bring sort of the, like, I don't know, like the immediacy and kind of just everything that seems so cool. Like, when I was playing through this, I was like, man, I wish they would do a video game of Sleep No More so that I could experience it without having to fly to New York and buy a ticket. And this kind of has that same, I don't know, it's an approach that I think is really a rich possible vein, and I hope folks take this and run with it in a lot of ways.
And they do something interesting too in that, so nothing in this game is forced. You could really just like run through everything, as far as I could tell, and just not even watch a single scene if you didn't want to. But why are you playing this game if you're doing that? But also they sort of they give you incentive to find every person that's involved in the scene by putting little marks on the timeline. When you enter into a scene, there's a scrub bar across the bottom, just like you would see when you're moving, back and forth on like YouTube or something. And there'll be little marks on there that indicate moments in the scene when a character is looking at their AR desktop. And you can go, and if you can find that person in that moment, and interact with their AR desktop when they're interacting with it, which is basically like a Tony Stark-esque, floating screen in front of them that they get to interact with while they're walking. You can grab it and see what they were looking at when they were doing that. And it gives you so much more information about them as characters and what's happening and how they're dealing with it. They all have a sort of text or instant message system back and forth with each other, or with people back on Earth or wherever. Like my favorite non-scene character, Cluey Dog. And so you get these conversations. Maybe it's between the admin Evie St. James with like the IT network person. I can't think of her last name, but it's Natalie. You see what they're talking about. So not only are you getting the actual like human interaction between the two people, but you're getting the text message interaction between people, which might, we all speak differently through text, and maybe we'll say things through text that we wouldn't say in person as well. So you get all that information too. So you don't have to go and get those. You don't have to do anything, but like there's big red or big check marks at the bottom when you do it. So it certainly incentivizes you with, video game achievement style, big check marks. So, which, I don't think a game like this needs, but it's nice.
It's nice to make sure that you don't miss any of those, what I think are some of the most sort of revealing, even if you don't ever find your way into these characters' bedrooms and like read through the paperwork filed in the drawers under their beds.
When you put it that
the
way,
personal quarters.
Exactly. Even if you miss that stuff, you'll get a really good picture of what's going on just from those AR desktops. So it's really good that they sort of like, really light those so that you don't miss them. You know what I mean? But there's also a ton of really great story stuff that's much more subtle and really hidden in a way that's very kind of Fullbright-y. I think, that's sort of their ethos or their aesthetic now, is this, these sort of layered stories where people's motivations are revealed to you slowly through details that seem almost inconsequential, but then they add up to a larger picture.
Yeah, this was what made me feel most like the sort of environmental storytelling. Like when I playing this, the walking simulator genre has evolved a lot. And to a degree, it feels more like guided storytelling. Like Firewatch, one of our favorite games, or at least one of my favorite games, was definitely environmental storytelling. But you're more or less being told, go here, go here, go here, go here, and that's what this game felt like too, which is totally fine. But the expansion of the characters through like the shit on the ground is where it felt the most Fullbrighty to me as well. I also think it's funny too, all these games, like you can pick stuff up, and if you hover kind of back where you picked it up from, you can put it back. But if you're just slightly to the side or to the left or whatever, you just kind of like fling the item. So there was like several times it's like you pick up a letter and it's like this heartfelt love letter or something, and then you just slightly miss where you're trying to, but it's just like, I just imagine the characters being like throwing it down, like this is not useful to me.
I actually had they had a lot of fun with the put back element. Did you guys find the skeleton?
Yes.
And the skull?
There's literally a skeleton in the closet when you open one.
And the skeleton is missing a head, and later you can find that skull, and if you backtrack, you can put the head back. It's got that same put back mechanic, just as if you'd picked it up off the floor, but you can put it back in its place to give the skeleton back its skull. And there's quite a few little things like that.
I'm sure that is an achievement. I actually saw the skull. I just didn't go back and get it.
Did you guys make
I'm a bad person?
Did you make a basket in the basketball hoop?
Oh, yeah. Mm-mm. Yeah. It's a real good sports game there.
I tried and I failed because I cannot play sports even virtually.
It's zero gravity. You just go up next to it and push it through. It's in the hub of the world is zero gravity, so you can just move up, down, left, right, whatever you want, X and Y axis. And of course, there's a basketball hoop that's spinning around, which it's like, man, if I was in a zero gravity place forever, I would absolutely put up a basketball hoop because that would be so much fun.
So I mentioned body shapes earlier, but I just want to give a shout out for the diverse cast of characters. We got gender parity. We got a lot of ethnicities. It's the future. They really could have done whatever they wanted. Everyone is from interesting states or countries. Like you have a lot of fun backtracking. I think you're from the Republic of California yourself.
Yeah.
But especially in a game where people are kind of reduced to these polygon shapes, you didn't need to do different body types. You didn't need to, when we look at people's badges, have different ethnicities, different ages, different, it does have my favorite everyone is gay in space trope, almost everyone, which I love. Well, you get actual relationships. It's not just like a person is like, I went on a date with a man last week.
The relationship between Natalie and Roberta, their conversations were my favorite.
And their wedding photos, very cute.
I think you spend the most time with Natalie and Roberta, but it might just be my memory of them being the most interesting characters too, though. They even they do some crazy stuff, which is just good sci-fi work. There's the Tibetan War of 2052. Did you guys find that?
Yeah, yeah.
I forget his name. The character
Andrew Dogyeb.
Yeah, he's his family are refugees from the Tibetan War of 2052. They just do some really good it's sci-fi tropes, but it works every time. So
and Sarah's room is just this beautiful Zen, of course the medic is into yoga, but if you look around you're like, oh no, it's more specific than that. It's not just a generic yoga. She actually has it's something she turns to in a crisis. She's the medic. It's part of her healing practice. Everything that seems kind of superficial, they tend to deepen a degree past what you would expect in a action movie, sci-fi movie, video game, you name it. It's another level deeper.
Yeah, every character feels extremely well thought out and also well researched, and every detail of their room speaks to something about their backstory. Every piece of trash in every room you can tell, okay, this piece of trash was definitely Roberta's because X. There's so much detail in every inch of this game, and almost all of it speaks directly to one of these 6 characters' backstories and motivations, and it really adds up to 6 characters that I cared about individually almost as much as I cared about really the 2 central characters of Gone Home. Like, they've really done a great job of building a cast that you want to know more about, that you care about, that that you really, really hope are okay.
Yeah, everyone has there's some depth, there's some other story that you learn about, be it either the relationship that's not talked about, or Sarah has a huge burden on her shoulders about a previous thing at a previous job that she's dealing with.
Probably the most interesting sort of backstory. She was such a fascinating character. I'm glad she was so central to the sort of story.
And that's there's no conversation between two characters saying like, well, it'd be really easy for them to be like, well, I know what you did on the old space station, or what, anything like that. But it's not there. It's a team that's working together, and everyone has their own stuff, their own baggage. Even that like Tibetan thing, as far as I could tell, that was found on one piece of paper. If you happen to look in the one guy's room, he's just a botanist, though. He's not a revolutionary who, is constantly talking about his war past. He's there on the space station trying to do his job.
Yeah, he's working in the service industry. Like, essentially all of these people, this is just a job in hospitality that they took because it pays in loyalty in the bizarre economic system that they've kind of devised for this future.
By all accounts, it's not a great job, though. There's one. Oh yeah, I think it's Natalie is way more qualified for. She could be making way more money elsewhere, but she wants to be there because Bert is also working there. So they kind of imply that like it's not. They're not even making that much money. It's a job.
Yeah. It would have been so easy for this game to say, now you're going to go to the botanist quarter, and you're going to learn all about the botanist now, and all of the backstory will be here. Now, some of that's true. You get some extra time in their personal quarters in their area, but it's not as if you haven't been learning about them through the entire game. It's not a siloed game like that. You learn more and more of people over time. It really doesn't it's not like Edith Finch, which you might have played, where you're going to learn about one thing at a time. The game is much more concerned about them as a community, their backstory, and how it affects how they deal with crisis now. So before we jump into our spoiler break, I want to talk about one other thing, and that is that this game feels like it could very easily slide into a virtual reality platform with no problems. I mean, even at the beginning, you are walking up and like as if you were doing a virtual reality machine, putting your hands on things. There's a lot of lifting. The controls are easy. It feels like maybe they even considered having this in VR first. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I went to Shane's house and sat and played the beginning, and especially the beginning section where you're seated and you can see your feet and there's this little video that plays before you get up. Felt like the start of all 4 VR games I've played. All started that exact same way. I'm only citing 4 because I'm a novice, but it still felt like the opening sequence was setting up a virtual reality game.
Yeah, I
see that. I think that they were playing with that AR concept, which is a great sci-fi conceit for the context. But yeah, you could easily see them tying that to, put these pods on your head, and by doing that, you're configuring your HTC Vive or whatever. It could easily be a VR game, and it sort of surprises me that they didn't end up going that direction. As far as I know, this is out for Mac, PC, and Linux on a bunch of different platforms, everything from itch.io to Steam. But as far as I know, it is not on any of the VR platforms. So it's not on the PlayStation at all. You can't play it on the PSVR. And as far as I know, it doesn't support any headsets for PC.
Well, I think they don't yet have a effective way to handle walking in VR that doesn't just have you still holding like the PS4 controller or whatever controller. So once a good solution, like a real good solution to that is found, I think this genre is going to explode in VR because it makes the most sense. Like, yeah, I would love to play this game or Firewatch or Gone Home or any of them where I'm actually in it, picking the things up. But until we get good traversal that would allow free reign like you would want,
and doesn't make you feel slightly queasy.
But once that gets solved, for sure, I think that it's going to be a floodgates for this because this whole genre. That's like perfect for VR. It's what you would want in VR. Being the character in the story. Other than Super Hot VR, which was cool. Which
I got to play this week. I know that's a huge side note, but like just to relate it to what we're talking about here, like to make Super Hot work in VR, they took the movement out. You can raise up and crouch, but you're not walking around at all. It's the Super Hot experience with people coming at you, but you're standing in one place. So
and it works great, but that won't work if you want to like crouch and get down and crawl under a table or something like that in these games. But
like if they could figure out some way to let you play out these scenes, without having to walk around, that would be one thing. But I think that's so key. Like exploring the space is so key to this experience that it would take a really excellent implementation of just that sort of walking around in 3D virtual space to make it really work for me. But I do think it would be really interesting to see this storytelling style with this sort of interacting with these pre-recorded scenes in this way. That would be something that I would be really interested in trying in a VR game.
I just want to call out too, I know you already mentioned it, but I think the voice acting really deserves a moment of spotlight because there's a lot of games where I kind of feel like voice acting can kind of take it or leave it. Like I'm fine reading, I'm fine, if they want to do voice acting, but in this game, it sealed it. The voice acting and the fact that it's spatial related, so like when people are talking, as you get closer to them, it gets louder. You can kind of hear people talking through doors. So the entire sound design on that element with the voice acting was phenomenal and really all the actors did a great job and really helped set the tone and the stress of the situation and the reality of the characters. Just a great job.
That's a really good point. The spatial audio is like surprisingly important in a way because like you do hear people talking seemingly sort of from the other room and things like that in this game. And that's actually, useful information because then you can go investigate what they're talking about. But man, the voice acting in this, like every single actor that worked on this did a phenomenal job. Like it's well-written dialogue and that definitely helps. It's dialogue that feels natural, but it is so well delivered. Like it puts so many other games that I've played completely to shame. Even games that I thought had really good voice acting. These are great performances from all 6 actors.
And there's zero facial expressions there's some body positions to help you, but when there's so little, there's no uncanny valley here because you just have a body position and a voice, and it's a lot more effective than you would think.
Yeah, that actually probably helped. Like, I don't know if they would have been able to pull off the voice acting if they'd had to also do things like mouth animations to go along with it. Yeah, this is an independent game. There's no way that they're going to be able to put a motion capture rig and like facial camera on every one of these actors while they're giving these incredible performances.
And it wouldn't feel real.
Well, and the fact that it's in a 3D space. So when games already have a hard enough time with mouth animations and people talking, and that's when the game is like presenting it to you from a particular angle. They don't have to worry about what it would look like if you happened to, while you were watching this, like get up on a shelf and look down at it from the top, or wherever you want to go, because sometimes there's zero gravity. So I think it was both it's a great example of design meeting story. This is probably a chicken and the egg sort of thing, but it just works, and it makes it more timeless too, because every game that does voice, CGI or whatever is just only going to look worse with time. And this game can hold up because they didn't even try. They did a more interesting solution.
Designing to limitations.
Yep, exactly.
So before we talk about anything spoilery, I guess we should wrap up for those of you who are going to be leaving us before the spoiler break. After the spoiler break, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about each of the characters and some of the backstory that you discover throughout the game. We're going to talk about details of the ending. There's a lot of really cool stuff to dive into there. So if you've played the game, please stick with us after the spoiler break, and we're going to be talking about all that stuff. Or heck, if you have decided that this game is not for you, but you're generally curious, or you don't have a whole lot of investment in the discovering of this stuff for yourself. But before we slide into that spoiler break, first off, this is a game that you can pick up on Xbox One, Steam, itch.io, which is how I recommend it, because they will give you a Steam key if you're the sort that really, really needs that, and that then you're supporting itch, and you're supporting the developers a little more directly, because they get more of that pie than they do on Steam. And it's also available on GOG if you use that, if you're one of those 10 folks. It's $19.99. And I would say in terms of time, really varies depending on how sort of detail-oriented you are. But I would expect to spend maybe 3 hours with this game. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, 2 to 4, I'd say.
Yeah. I always love it when a game time, you can tell it's an exploration game when it's like, it's either going to be this time or double this time.
Yeah.
2 to 4, 2 to 5 hours,
Mm-hmm. And you can find our show on the internet at www.theshortgame.net, where you'll find a contact form with, that's how you can get in touch with us and let us know about cool short games that you're playing, things that you think that we ought to cover. We want to hear about that stuff. Or you can let us know your feedback on these episodes. We love hearing from you. You can also find us on Twitter at _shortgame, or you can leave us a review on iTunes. Those really do help. We haven't had one in a while. If you are in the iTunes review leaving mood, we really appreciate that. Go search for us there, and that's a great way to help people find the show. I am on Twitter at ReaganK, that's RayGanK, and Nate, where can people find you?
Twitter at Nate STL.
And Laura, where can people find you?
You can also find me on Twitter at Laura J. Nash.
And here it is, your spoiler break.
So this ship is full of ships.
Nice.
No, there's a ton of romance going down on board, and I am here for it. I mean, some of them are on the open. Like we've mentioned, the lovely marriage of Natalie and Roberta, the network specialist and the mechanical engineer.
Wait, are they
one of
actually
whom
married?
was
Because
slumming
I
their
didn't
job.
realize that they were actually married.
Oh, it's after the spoiler break. You could on Bert's work desk, one of the pictures on her workshop is actually her just married picture of the two of them in wedding dresses making out in zero G.
I don't think I saw that. Oh, how did I miss that?
Yeah.
That's great.
They get on that. So it's shown that space elevator that malfunctioned, that the Sarah was involved in her backstory. Mm-hmm. There's a picture of the two of them making out on that elevator in space.
Wow.
With a just married picture.
That's great.
And I'm like, I'm glad that the elevator didn't malfunction while these two lovely ladies were making out.
And only killed that social media star.
It only killed that food guru, the travel blogger.
Yeah.
Can I just say that, like, the thing that was the best surprise about this game for me was that while everything is really sort of tense and even kind of dark, this is not a utopian future.
Corporations are terrible.
I'm so glad that like everything ultimately kind of turned out basically okay. like, and so, finding out, okay, Roberta and Natalie, they're okay. They have this beautiful relationship that seems like, that's great. Finding out Clive, who seems kind of like a sad sack, seems to be turning over a new leaf in his sort of background romance with Evie St. James, where, it's not professional for them to talk about it. So you don't see it in any of the AR scenes, or you do, but it's, it's something that you have to really look for. Every one of these characters has these lives that are full of love for each other and other people, and it's such a relief that this game doesn't end up with you opening a bunch of pods and finding their corpses.
Yeah, I know, right?
Oh my God. And how a cutscene ends with the two of them like leaping on each other.
They're like
I
banging
know.
Yes.
the corner of the.
Get it, girls.
So
also,
cute.
like a good example of this is there's that scene where, so you're finding out, half the crew's going into cryo, and you find out that like Natalie was really not a good candidate for cryo. It's very likely that she's going to die. It's actually most likely that she's going to die from going into cryo, but it's like their only option. And you get this little moment of stress because, she's a great character.
I was sure I was going to find her frozen corpse.
No, it's like 5 minutes later, she's fine. Like, they don't make you stew on that. That's one of the last scenes before you get into the resolution when you see her again. So there was no, I was really expecting a, like, cut scene of like, get her out of there, and like a chest.
She has a heart murmur.
Yeah, and because there is a chest compression scene, like any good drama. No, she's just fine, and she's just floating there, and the cat's there, and everybody's great.
The cat, Margaret Catwood.
Too good.
But I did want to talk about the space elevator one, because that was the one that was really interesting to me. Like, Sarah, in a way, is kind of the protagonist.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone is, but you spend the most time with her, and she ultimately is the one who, like, you
kind of saves the day.
Game. Yeah, it kind of saves the day. The robot does too.
She's besties with the AI.
It's sort of implied that she's the one that contacted. So the character that you're playing, that's the contractor investigating the place. At the end, it seems sort of implied that you are playing the character that she contacts at the end of the game.
Is it? Or
I didn't get that.
I think she contacted Cluey Dog or one of
those
guys.
I thought that you are Cluey Dog.
No, I think so. Cluey Dog leaked everything to the press, and you're a member of the resistance that went in as a fake contractor.
Yeah, it's definitely not like specific. That was my read on it, but maybe I'm drawing at straws there. But Cluey Dog definitely tips off the press, and that is what results in you being there. I thought that Sarah's backstory was absolutely the most interesting one.
Well, it's just crazy, she is involved in a tragedy, and it's kind of the first hint that the corporations are no good. They're trying to pressure her into taking full responsibility for the tragedy, and if so, she'll even get like a better job if she does, which she continues to turn down.
But what I adore about Sarah is that she has if any character was secretly on the ship to blow up the AI based on their backstory, it would be Sarah. I mean, she's in this horrible situation where an AI malfunctioned and the corporation blamed her for it. And yet, when you see Sarah in most of her scenes, she's having these rich, intensely personal conversations with Odin, the AI.
Yeah, she's definitely the most interested in sort of seeing the humanity in the AIs.
And honestly, having a great relationship where everyone else is having conversations with each other or on the phone, she's more likely to have conversations with Odin and he's guiding her through her meditation. He knows her. I am so happy they didn't make her like a counter-revolutionary or, I thought at one point maybe she set the whole thing in motion because she wanted to blame the corporation. They don't make her evil.
Yeah. Well, none
It's
of these
much
characters,
more
even
complicated.
the AI is nice in a way. Like even the AI kind of helps save the day. I guess the
Not
only
kind of,
evil
straight up.
yeah. I guess the only evil characters are the Venturis Corporation CEO and his pet AI that like proposed the idea of sort of staging the disaster.
Well, and they also part of Natalie's backstory is that she's working really hard to increase like the compassion and understanding of the AI, which
And independence.
and
Yeah.
independence, which I kind of assumed was part of what led to Odin making the decision to go against its orders and ultimately save the humans and
Yeah.
be recruited by the AI. Is robots people? We keep having this discussion. It's amazing that this question has sustained sci-fi, fiction for like 50 years now.
Yes, well, of course, that's because it all comes back to is people, you know. But yeah, it's so. This is.
Our robots ourselves.
Yeah.
I really, really like sort of the version that sort of like the sci-fi take on AI here. You know, the idea that roughly 100 years ago they finally got sort of an AI and they've branched like almost like doing clippings off of a tree and planting them, that these AIs are kind of branches or versions that are based on a sort of a core AI program, but they've expanded on them not by like reprogramming them or inventing new AIs. They've expanded on them by over more than 100 years, essentially training them through conversation and things like that. And that's why they have to keep tabs on Odin's scores on his like compassion and inventiveness and so on. And those are things that they don't program into him. They sort of draw them out of him through conversation and through experimentation. I think that's a really fascinating idea for like how AI could work. It's, at some point you have to raise it like a child or something.
It ties into the tenets of machine learning, which is that you must give them the inputs to let the computers, make their mistakes or make the connections between things that really we're the inputs, and then they're running through to learn from that data set, that there's going to be some emerging intelligence even in our nascent kind of terrible AIs now. Like you get a lot of the darker sides right now are what everyone's looking at, which is, oh no, we've made a racist robot because we gave it Twitter.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Don't feed robots Twitter.
Or we made a racist robot because we only tested it on white faces the whole time.
Hey, yeah.
Oops.
But when you have lovely Natalie training them with an entire drawer full of Rubik's cubes, then Odin becomes really cool and woke and helps you out in trouble.
I like that. It is kind of a future where it's like we're past a lot of the bullshit that everyone struggles with today. I mean, this is only 2088. It's not that far in the future, and the world is by far not a perfect place. But
at least the spaceship is.
Right. You look at this team of people, and they are great people, and they've had a good influence on Odin, and he helps them out in the end. And I really sort of liked that. That made the sort of uplifting ending feel a little bit real because it wasn't your typical downer sci-fi ending, in my opinion.
Yeah, the game was setting you up over and over and over to be sad. Yeah. I was just so ready constantly. Like, yeah, the cryo chambers. I'm going to open a cryo chamber, and there's going to be a body in there. I know.
Just like I thought for sure I was going to find a corpse in the attic in Gone Home, but it turned out with a really like uplifting ending. This is a signature for them.
Gone Home, I always thought there were going to be ghosts. It was not.
Ghosts everywhere.
I was so certain that this was going to be ghosts constantly.
And how happy am I that this is not a game where for 20 minutes a robot lectures you about humans and violence and preventing nuclear war, or that humans are violent towards each other, or that humans are dark and depraved and need to be put down. Like,
humans are truly
they are
illogical.
not interested in robot commenting on human violence, and I am so happy. I'm sick of it.
It's really just a nice sci-fi story that comes down to 6 very nice personal stories. And I mean,
7
what else could you want? Yeah, that's true, because Odin's story is pretty fleshed out too. And what else could you really want out of I was 100% satisfied with this game. I will say that, and I don't want this to sound like, it's hard to compare anything against Gone Home, a game that I feel in a way kind of changed the way that I look at games. But this game was a totally worthy follow-up from a really great team. I'm so glad that we finally got to play it. I just really, really enjoyed it.
And to replace the narrative about guns and violence and humans being generally awful, there's an anti-capitalism message that's super strong. I mean, you open lockers and there are union packets. The humans celebrate Obsolescence Day, which is a party completely programmed by their AI about the day that humans were decided that they could keep humans on spaceships. And ultimately, the corporation is terrible.
Oh man, the corporations are terrible. But it's this sort of, but this is by no means like a workers' utopia future, but it's a future where there is some path forward for humans sort of struggling against these enormous forces of
the hospitality industry.
Oh yeah, or just this enormous corporate control and also just automation of people. The whole Obsolescence Day thing was like a really cute way to kind of explain why do we have people on this space station at all when we have these incredible AIs and robotic stuff and everything that could probably be doing these same jobs. I mean, heck, it's because of unions, which is a really interesting thing to think about. Like, what are unions? What is the role of unions in space? What is the role of unions in a world where strong AI and complete automation exist? It's sort of an interesting sort of side thing to think about. It's not front and center, but it's there.
Well, kind of. The entire motion of the story is because of this concept. But also, this is a core element of Subsurface Circular, the game we played last time. So it's an interesting topic. I think this game focuses more on the human element of it, whereas the other one, Subsurface focused more on is robots people side of it. But it is. I mean, it is. The game is not preachy about it, I think was what's different. That is a core element of this game, is that corporations are terrible. And that's not even futuristic. I think this is their take on this is current. They just have robots now.
And it's completely current. I mean, you get into an elevator shaft and they make you look at a commercial for their own company. That's every elevator in an office building right now has the damn commercials playing at you, where they give you a weather and a business stat and tell you that it's always good weather for business.
Oh God.
That's my elevator. So the fact that every time you go down a shaft, you have to see an advertisement makes complete sense. The Carnival Cruise guy has to have the word carnival at the bottom of his social media avatar. I've seen that on Twitter from people's companies, making them put the name of the company on their avatar. Little details like that is great.
I love things advertising at you when you are consuming the thing that they are advertising at you. It's like, I know. What more do you want from me? I'm here. Do you want me to live here? I'll move in McDonald's. Fine, whatever. Give me a place to stay.
That sounded really desperate there for a moment, Nate. Give me a place to stay, McDonald's.
I just, if you're going to keep yelling at me, just let me live with you, corporations. I guess that's what I'm saying. Send me to space.
It's like Disney Channel only showing Disney commercials.
The sort of loyalty economy that they have in this game. It's this really sort of dark economic future where companies control your working life to such a degree that they don't pay you in money you can spend just on anything. They pay you in company script called loyalty that you can't.
Dave and Buster coins.
We're getting. I mean, I am preparing myself to be paid in Amazon Prime credits because I feel like that is the next step.
You have to live in an Amazon locker and buy your food at Whole Foods. Yeah, it's a dark future, but also one that's kind of full of hope, which is why I really love it. It has true conflict. It's an interesting world full of things that you can have an opinion about, but it's not. This is not Blade Runner. This is a sort of a hopeful future in a way on the personal level, and that's what I really liked about it.
I am hopeful that we enact National Fuck It Day which they seem to have done in this future. So.
Which is my favorite holiday.
I wondered about that.
I looked on every day of the calendar, and when I found National Fuck It Day, I just kind of circled it in my heart, took a screenshot, and sent it to everybody.
What holiday do you think that we currently have could be repurposed as National Fuck It Day?
I'm willing to give up Columbus Day.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's becoming Indigenous Peoples Day. I'm thinking 4th of July converts into National Fuck It Day. All we do anyway is just shoot fireworks and barbecue. So let's care even less. I'm just Fuck It Day. It's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sold. All
Let's
right.
make it international, though.
That's
Too America-centric,
That's
as
the
this
America
game
I
has
want to
taught
live
me.
in. Yep. All right. Well, I'm going to go eat at Taco Bell, renew my Whole Foods subscription, and bury myself into my Amazon bungalow. How about you guys?
And never, ever invest in a timeshare.
Ooh. Yeah. And I'm going to go beg Siri not to kill me.
Oh,
Oh,
right. Well, you think it's safe to say we recommend this game?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I wholly recommend it. I thought there was a bad ending and tried to figure out how not to end it badly, and then I just gave up and ended it badly in my head. And then they were like, psych, you're resistant. So even when you think that you're a failure in this game, it's still telling you you're great and that you can save the AI. So
Yep.
I think of it more as just a really
sparingly.
good story than it's got a lot of great game ideas here, but this is just really a good story told in an extremely inventive way. So,
and everyone wins. Even the cat gets to survive.
Christopher Nolan needs to pick it up and make a movie. There will be a movie of this game probably. I hope someone does it well. Because Hollywood doesn't have any good writers anymore, so they go to all the video games. But anyway.
and thank you guys so much for joining us. Sorry. Nate, I did not mean to do that. That was bad comic timing.
It was beautiful.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us on this episode of The Short Game. We already did our admin before the spoiler break, so I'll just leave it with thank you for listening, and join us next week for another episode of The Short Game.